Breaking news out of Quebec for you. Montreal Mayor Valérie Plante just announced a state of emergency in her city as COVID-19 cases skyrocket. CBC's Natasha Fatah joins me live with more. What are the details from the mayor, Natasha?
So, Hannah, we're going to talk about the details from the mayor in just a moment, but part of the context for why the mayor is calling for this state of emergency is around what's happening in the province of Quebec. And specifically today, those astounding numbers of over 5,000 new COVID-19 cases that were confirmed by the province. So on that front, our colleagues at Radio Canada are also saying that they've spoken to sources both in Quebec and in Ottawa who are confirming to them that the provincial government of Quebec is going to ask for support from the Canadian Armed Forces in terms of its pandemic response, because the situation is getting so dramatically out of control, specifically around the booster shots. So what our colleagues are saying is that the request was officially made to the federal government yesterday, that the federal government has received that, and perhaps as early as today, they could respond. But according to Radio Canada's reporting, that relief may not come from the military until later on, perhaps not as early as January 1st. So that's something we're going to be watching. Of course, new provincial restrictions came into effect. And then you come to the situation in Montreal with Valérie Plante. Now, she did issue a tweet shortly before holding a press conference where she specifically said that Montreal is deciding to have a state of emergency to better deal with the turbulence caused by the Omicron variant. This allows us to guarantee services to essential workers and vulnerable people, among others. We are making sure that no one is left behind during this pandemic. As I've been saying with you all morning, Savannah, this is not the news anybody wants. People want more freedom and less restrictions. But because of Omicron, so many officials, both political and health, are saying it's time to just scale it back. Have a listen to Valérie Plante.
This virus, Omicron, is very contagious. It is spread so very quickly. So for the good of those whom we love, the people around us, our friends, our family, I would ask you, all Montrealers, to please show a lot of prudency. And I wish to remind you that the City of Montreal will be there to support, once again, everybody. We've left nobody behind, and that this crisis, this new wave, well, we'll get through it together like we've done before.
And we certainly have been here before, Suhana. No one wants to be here again, but unfortunately, the City of Montreal going under a state of emergency.
And starting today, Canadians planning even a short trip over to the U.S. are going to once again, Natasha, have to get a PCR test before they return home to Canada. So what do people need to keep in mind?
So what you need to remember is that just last month, the federal government said if you are a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident and you're fully vaccinated and you leave the country, most likely for the United States, and come back within 72 hours, you don't need to present a negative PCR or molecular test. That exemption was brought in just last month. Well, guess what? As of today, that's gone. Even if you just go for an afternoon across the border, whether it's Windsor or Buffalo or in British Columbia, you're going to have to present a negative PCR test in order to get back into Canada. It's causing a lot of frustration for people, a last-minute change coming around the holiday season when so many people cross the border to see loved ones. But unfortunately, this is the situation that we're in, and airlines as well as airports are saying it's causing so much anxiety for people, for customers and for travelers, and it's causing more confusion than it needs to. That is up for policymakers and historians to figure out whether it was worth it or not. But what Dr. Tedros from the World Health Organization is saying, Suhana, is don't travel. He's being unequivocal about it. If you don't need to, and very few of us need to travel, then stay home because it's just not worth the risk of spreading Omicron.
And we are certainly seeing more provinces tighten up restrictions, Natasha, ahead of the holidays. Just bring me up to speed on who's doing what.
Well, specifically municipally, you just heard about Montreal and Quebec with this issue of potentially bringing in the military. And then let's turn to Manitoba, where we know that new restrictions come into effect today. Limitations on indoor gatherings, whether you're vaccinated or unvaccinated, major capacity limits on restaurants, bars, theaters, any sort of sporting venue and gyms. Churches, if you're at a church that requires proof of vaccination, 50% capacity. If you attend one that does not require proof of vaccination, well, then 25% capacity or 25 individuals, whichever number is less. And it just sounds like so much, Suhana, so much bad news. And, you know, we often get asked by the public, why are you always telling us the bad stuff? So let me offer this from Dr. Isaac Bogosh, is that we do have the tools already in our possession to protect ourselves and have a safe holiday. Have a listen to Dr. Bogosh.
Tools that we have are still extremely helpful. Vaccines. People are acting like the vaccines don't work anymore. That's not true. Of course they work. They're not as effective as they were, for example, with Delta or prior variants, but they are still helpful. 2 doses are good at protecting people from having a severe outcome. 3 doses are better, especially at protecting people from getting the infection in the first place. But it's not as if 2 doses do nothing. So I think it's extremely important to remember that the tools that we have are still very, very valuable tools.
And the other tools, of course, Suhana, are a good quality mask, protect yourself, social distance, and limit your contacts, and have a safe holiday.
We'll talk again. That is CBC's Natasha Fatah in Toronto.